Uh, I'm going to open the Bridgewater Finance Committee meeting for April 24th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. Our first order of business is the approval of meeting minutes from our last meeting. Any questions, comments, motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you,
Second.
MJ. Who was the second?
Rig.
Thank you, Rick. If we could do a roll call, please, Josh?
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to our next order of business, public comments. I would ask if there's any public comment. You state your name and your street address. Do we have any public comments? Okay, not hearing any public comments, we will move on. I would entertain a motion that we have Mr. George with us this evening. He has graciously accepted our invitation to discuss the town clerk salary order with us real quick. So a motion to take business out of order.
I'd like to make the motion to take business out of order to discuss town clerk's salary, also known as Order FY 23053.
Thank you.
Second.
I heard a second out there. Josh?
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we will now move on to FY 23-053, the town clerk salary. Those of us that have been on this committee for a while, we've discussed the town clerk salary over the years here as a committee. We did invite Mr. George as the author of this order just to join us real quick. If you want to just give us, Councilor George, the thought process here.
Sure.
I know
Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I'm approaching this as with any town employee, looking at the salary, I would equate, any town employee as being able to have steps to get a raise within their salary grade. I think the town clerk has done an excellent job. I think she's well deserving of the increase. So that's the reason why I'm putting it in. I can't. I think someone's on mute.
Oh, that was me, sorry.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. George?
Yeah, Sean, can you tell us where the values that you are at the order, where they came from? Like if they're comparable town clerk salaries to the same size as ours and the same duties, or where do the numbers initiate from? I'm not against a raise. I'm
No,
just
no, I
curious.
mean,
where the
but-
other-
I believe in the town manager can correct me. When we did the set, and I'm going to use terms probably not 100% accurate because I'm going to use the private sector, but when the town did a town-wide salary review, an established band, right? I call them bands, but I think they're steps or let me look it up here. I'll call them ranges for the lack of a better term. The town clerk salary, where she fell within the ranges, that's where she started. So if you look at it, Julie, we've seen some data per se in regards to other towns. And some she's right there, some that I'll say the position is higher. I really haven't done an in-depth review of those because I'm right now, at least in my mind, not looking to make a significant change in the salary. I think it's a good compensation. People could argue that maybe it's a little bit under. It's a heck of a lot better than where she started, which I wasn't on the council for full disclosure. So I wasn't part of that. But I think it's a good salary from there. If the council or if you all decide, you want to see a different number, that's totally up to you, but I'm comfortable right now at doing this increase.
Thank you.
This is big. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Rick, go right ahead, please.
So I guess I was wondering, is this it's probably along the lines of Julie's question. Is this number aligned with town clerk's responsibilities? I mean, anecdotally speaking, and from my visual, it clearly appears and seems as though that her responsibilities are pretty robust. So I'm just wondering if this number aligns with her responsibilities, and are her responsibilities similar to other town clerks with similar towns?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, if the number should have been significantly higher, that would have been, my recommendation. But I'm also looking at it from the perspective of how you go forward, adjusting salaries, doing the steps, having methodology to it. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the resident expert on town clerks in other towns. And have to, really look into that. That to me would be a totally different approach to it if we're going to make a significant adjustment. And I still think the step is good. But I'm comfortable with it right now. Now, again, as I said, other people may disagree with me, which is fine. But I think this adjustment is well within, I think, a comfortable number for the duties that are done. And Merrily does an excellent job, and she probably does, well, not probably, she does things out, extra, and I totally understand that. I just want to try to stay within the confines of how we approach salaried employees in regards to reviews and steps. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I remember having a conversation, I think it was one of our November meetings, where it was a similar conversation about another position, and there was market research to some extent. I heard market, if I remember correctly, that there was some level of market research that was done to really compare that person's salary with other like-minded towns. So what I'm saying is, if we were to compare apples to apples, or in this case, what I'm hearing from you is that we haven't done a deep dive analysis to really make sure that we're comparing apples to apples in terms of, does Marilee's salary align with her responsibilities and all the other things that excuse me, and all the other things that she does, and is it aligned with like-minded towns, plus her her responsibilities and everything that she does. And the reason that I'm mentioning is that my fear is that if we're not doing due diligence by making sure that her salary is on par, while I understand we're trying to create a methodology in terms of looking at salaries, I thought we had somewhat of a methodology when we discussed someone else's salary sometime in November, if I remember correctly, where the methodology was, we're going to look at comparable towns. We're going to look at, what does comparable towns that's similar to ours pay for someone in that particular role. I just want to make sure that we do our due diligence correctly and make sure that, that Marilee or whoever might be the next town clerk in the future is compensated accordingly.
Rig,
Yeah.
if I could answer that, we've actually gotten quite a few comps from different towns around us as far as what they pay their town clerks. Now, the town clerk is a little bit unique too, because the town clerk here is elected. Okay, and they can be unelected. Some towns, they actually hire them. So I'm looking at Middleborough right now. Middleborough is a town that has about the same amount of people. We have 1,000 people off. And they're looking to hire a town clerk for $89,500, right? And it does list out some of the things. If you look at tonight's sheets, you'll see that we have Franklin also as a comparison. I think there are 100. And Franklin has a similar town government to us. In fact, we kind of copied them a little bit.
Yeah.
And they also have a town population. It's about 4,000 people different. So as far as I agree with Mr. George, as far as Mrs. Hunt's experience and time in office, I think is appropriate. It may be a little bit low. But I guess the bigger question is, this being elected position, Mr. George, and Ms. Hunt has indicated probably not going to run again.
Correct.
And we have a new person in the position. Now, the process is the same. That doesn't change. They got to do the same job. Do they start out on the same part of the pay scale? Or like any newer employee, do you envision they start lower on the scale?
That's a million dollar question. And I will give you the same answer that I've given everyone. I don't think we can speak for future town councils if there's a new town clerk that comes into the job. I think that would be up to that sitting town council to establish what they feel is a good commensurate salary. Now, I'll just say this for my own personal self. I don't ever want to see what happened to Merrilee at the beginning happen to anybody else. I think that was wrong. And I think if you had people in the room, they would agree to that. But I would say from my personal perspective that I don't, again, I come from the private sector. Someone who comes into a job with no experience replacing somebody that's got 7 or 8 years on the job, I don't necessarily know you can start them at the same exact level and work their way up. We do have a salary range in this particular one. And Michael, keep me honest here. I'm trying to read it off my phone. Give me 1 second here. I'm just kicked off. So just give me 1 second, guys, because I just had it and it got kicked off. Let me see. Let me see. So I believe within, I'll say the level 12, the salary range goes from, call it 78 to 102. So again, I can't, unless I'm on the town council, maybe I am, but I think within that particular range, that the town clerk stays in that range, then someone who's running for it should have a minimum expectation that they come into it at, 78, let's call it 78, or higher, depending on what the town council feels it should be. They may have municipal experience, they may have town clerk experience, things like that. I'm just saying, for me, if you're asking kind of my opinion in a way, it's whoever comes in after the person, you've got to look at it and figure out where they start.
Yeah, exactly. And the voters are going to choose who that person is, So it's not like they even go through the normal hiring process, so to speak.
Right, but in fairness too, and I think you'll agree, that person comes in, shouldn't be expected to get paid at 40 grand.
Yeah. I agree. There were politics involved in the move.
Yep.
So I agree 100%.
Right. So
I have a quick question, guys.
Sure, go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. Just real quick, I can speak to her value to this town, and she's done a bang up job every time I needed her. And I'm the new kid on the block here. And when we have a valued employee such as Merrilee, I mean, I think this increase would be 8%. I think that's what I read. My only question now is, when was the last time she got an increase, if there ever was one?
Oh, she's gotten increases. Hold on.
Yeah, she's gotten quite a few.
Is it within the year?
Oh yeah, within her term, she's had, I think, 4. Hold on.
I think Josh sent us an email on that, didn't you, Josh?
I want to say, Steve, we saw an order maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah, so I can tell you right now, she started fiscal year 15 at 45,000. It stayed that way until fiscal year 17. It went to 52. Fiscal year 18 went to 65. 19 went to, call it 67. 20 went to 75. 21 went to 77. 22 went to 78. And 23 was 82.
Me too. When she started at 45 and 15, it was part-time, wasn't it?
Yep. And then when it went to full-time, it started at 52. So the last mean, the last two raises that she's received has been 2%, and then the last one in 23, I'm just reading off the sheet, was 4.73%.
7.3.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Right,
Good
so then I
question.
guess I would question, Sean, this is Julie, if you're done, Stephen.
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
I understand, all of the above, like Rick said, like I was trying to say with, if the responsibilities haven't changed, you know, I don't know where an increase comes from. If, I understand a range in a position, but do we have any other elected positions where they get a step raise? Like if they are, like Nate said, they are elected, they're not in a union like the
Well,
other.
the town council gets a raise every year from 0 to 0.
But as some of the other volunteer committees, but
Yeah.
this isn't a volunteer position.
So
So-
the only two elected positions are town council and town clerk.
Right.
Full-time, well, paid positions. We're not full-time, obviously. So there really isn't another elected position that you can compare it to in regards to, in Bridgewater, you can compare it to look at their increases over the
Right,
course of.
so those other towns that we're comparing to are saying she's underpaid. If she's a town employee, not an elected position,
Well, some are elected, Julie, some, you
So,
know, they're
yeah.
not, you know, it depends on the town.
Now,
Right.
again, I want to just be clear. This is nothing against Merrily whatsoever, okay?
Well,
And from there, but Julie, you got to look at it from when you're elected, all you have to be is 18 and a registered voter, live in the town.
correct?
When you're being hired, they can specifically put in their qualifications that may make that person eligible for a higher salary rate.
Right, so what you're saying, right, so if we put in the 18-year-old and we're giving them these automatic things, you know, like you said, Marilee's awesome. Everybody agrees that, you know, she's done a fantastic job, maybe above and beyond her responsibilities, but there's no guarantees that the next person's going to do that,
No.
right?
Right,
So
but
why would we give them an automatic raise until they've,
well, it's not an
an
it's not a,
additional step raise in addition to a COLA?
so
This is the current employee, Julie,
Current,
we're
yeah.
talking about,
I
right?
I think down the road, if, you know, let me put it to you this way. I think anyone who runs for a position, the town clerk position, should have an idea, if they get elected, what the minimum compensation is going to be. I mean, I think, I don't care if it's an 18-year-old or an 80-year-old, I think that is wise. Within that range is where I think you're going to have a lot of discussion points on where people fall. That, to me, for a new person, falls on the town council
Yeah.
to start them at the very beginning or the middle or whatever the case may be.
That's right. We have no control over that, is what it comes down to.
This is big. I'm sorry, Nate.
Yeah.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Thank you. I guess I'm still trying to understand how did the council was this a unanimous decision by the council folks to say 85 grand?
It
Because
hasn't gone in front of the council for a final.
okay,
This was just referred to us. Well, I mean,
okay,
I introduced it. It went to budget and finance, and then it's to you all as well. It hasn't gone in front of the council yet for a final approval.
okay, thank you. I guess my my point that I'm making is, and I share the same sentiment with everyone else who said, Marilee does more than what her job responsibilities entail. And if that's the case, right, why aren't we aligning her salary based on her responsibilities, but also the examples that we see here? I mean, she is grossly underpaid given the examples that's been given. And I understand that she's an elected official versus, being hired. At the end of the day, she represents the town. And, it just, for me, I just want to understand how how the 85 was the number that was like, okay, this is the right number, given everything that she does and given other like-minded towns that are similar to ours and where their
Oh.
salaries are higher.
I mean, it's been over the course of time. I can't tell you specifically off the top of my head how we landed on that. I think we did look at other towns, but There are nuances to that and things of that nature. I'll leave it at this. I mean, if the powers to be feel that that number is too low, you all have the ability to make a recommendation to change it. That's hence the reason, you know, we put it in front of you, we put it in budget and finance, and then ultimately the town council can do the same exact thing. So I'm just I'm here saying, I feel it's good, but if I'm only one person, but if other people feel that that number should be more, then you can make that adjustment. But the only thing I would say is you would need to try to keep it within the salary range. You know, I don't think anyone, well, you know, I think the salary range is 102 the most, but I would recommend to that. But if you think this overall number is too low, then you all have the ability to make a recommendation to change it to whatever number you feel is accurate, well, not accurate, but warranted.
Is step 10 the highest step, Michael?
Well, I'm sorry, Nate, what was that?
Is step 10 the highest step inside the grade?
No, let me explain that a little bit. So there are multiple grades, but there are 12 steps within each grade. Each step has 2.5% between steps. And sort of going back to Rig's question about, you know, where does the number come from? We have done a couple of what are referred to as classification and compensation studies. And those are studies that take into consideration a whole bunch of different factors, including other comparable town pay scales. They cycle through a formula which looks at, you know, the authority and the levels of responsibility that the position has. In the town clerk's case, it's relatively simple because town clerk's duties are spelled out in Mass General Law pretty clearly. So it's not like we have to make up a job description. So once that placement on the grade, Councilor George is right. Within that grade, there's then a salary range. It starts from step 1, goes to step 12. And in this case, and the last couple of years, she's tracked sort of the increases that other non-union employees have gotten in town. So this, I believe, is moving from one step to the next step. And then there's a slight adjustment to the pay scale based on cost of living, essentially cost of living. So hopefully that explains a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, MJ.
through you to Councilor George and also just to the members of the committee as well. Through this discussion, I'm hearing two particular points that I feel are important that we should possibly look at. One, what I'm hearing is that we're just basically, we're arriving at a figure for Mrs. Hunt that we feel could be too low, but also might not be too high. So it's ambivalent at that point. But I'm also hearing the subtext of there's a potential here to have a conversation, hopefully in the near term, because Mrs. Hunt has already made indications she won't run again. Maybe perhaps it is time that in order for us to gain clarity and consistency in pay scales and salaries, because now it's starting to affect that, perhaps we need to have a conversation about converting our elected town clerk to an appointed town clerk. As Michael said, the requirements are pretty much set forth through Massachusetts general law. If you can't have someone, if you can't put out a hiring process for an appointed town clerk and they can't seem to cover those requirements, then your pay scale is going to constantly be off every time you get a new town clerk. Theoretically, let's just take a hypothetical here. Mrs. Hunt's not running again in 24, correct? Her term's up in 24?
Next year. Yep.
Okay, so let's take a look at a hypothetical. We're talking about pay scales that could potentially reset every time an election comes around. It's entirely possible. You could have a person end up being a one-termer. They get elected. They don't want to be in the position any further. They decide to leave. Your pay scale goes from 3-year term, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, goes right back down to 44,000. Try it again. Maybe they stay for 6 years. Maybe they stay for 9. Maybe they don't even stay for 1. I think the greater issue at hand is that we're going to have a problem with sliding pay scale for this position going forward. And yes, it's great to have this conversation that we want to set something up right now for Mrs. Hunt with the hope that, you know, whoever gets into the position next is going to be qualified enough to do it. I think right now we have the opportunity for future town clerks to go to an appointed position that allows us on the financial side of things to have a consistent pay scale and to have an incentivization to retain and keep the individuals that we may actually obtain as a new town clerk in the future. I don't know if it's something that needs to be done through a charter amendment or an order through the town council. But personally, from my point of view here, just to even hopefully move this conversation along to a final vote, I would personally be in favor of an amendment to this proposal that sees the exploratory possibility of converting an elected position to an appointed for purposes of salary compensation going forward.
I
You know,
appreciate that, MJ,
from-
but that would entail a charter change.
Yeah, that's.
That would have to go in front of the voters. So, I mean, it could be down the road, but I personally don't think you guys decide, but it can be incorporated into this order. But it is a conversation to be had if people, you know, are so inclined.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's definitely higher level. I think we need to refocus here a little bit. Right now, the position is elected and the town council are the ones that have the prerogative to, when we have a newly elected person, to set the pay scale. So hopefully, you know, it's something reasonable, but right now it's just the way it is. And we really can't change it. It is frustrating. I hear you, MJ. It would be nice to have that clarity, wouldn't it?
Mr. Chairman, it would be fantastic to have that kind of clarity. I'd like to know if there may potentially be the temerity to move forward with something like that. Yes, I know it could take time with a charter amendment, but right now we're looking at a problem that's going to come back to us as a committee probably in another 3 more years. And I'd like to see the start of a solution to a problem that is going to begin to exist after this next term. And frankly, the town deserves more consistency in that regard.
I agree 100% with you, MJ. Trust me, it's not that. I'm just not sure that we're the form. You know what I'm saying? Because it is a charter change. I think it would have to, you know, something at the town council level really is where that change has to start.
Well, actually, it could be done via a citizen's petition too.
That too.
So-
Yep. Because it is, you know, it's a strange, you know, and nobody on this council created, you know, I was there at that town council meeting many moons ago. I don't know if you were there, MJ. When they actually separated the town clerk, they made an amendment and they changed it to an elected position. When it was supposed to be an appointed position, well, that's what the original charter said.
Well, that was town meeting.
That was town meeting, that's correct, when we took that vote. And, you know, the argument that was made was that the town clerk, being the register of the votes of the polls, is an important position that should be in the hands of the electorate and not of executive authority. That was the mindset at the time, MJ. So now we have an elected town clerk right now, and that's just the reality.
Nathan, may I say something?
Yep.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. So I just ran some quick numbers and I'm looking at North Andover, Barnstable and Franklin, and the median for the median came out to 98,952. That's just the median, right? Between those 3 towns based on the list that was given to us.
Yep.
So if we were to, and I'm glad Mr. George mentioned that we can make a recommendation. I would advocate for this group to begin making a recommendation around the median, if not slightly higher. That would be my recommendation. Given the totality of, you know, Mrs. Hunt's responsibilities, the tasks that she does outside of her responsibilities, and also looking at, you know, the comparable salaries at other like-minded towns that was provided. So I would start to perhaps have a conversation starting at the median and see where we can land where it's fair, that she's being compensated fairly for her responsibilities and duties.
Now, with that, what was the meeting again, Rick? I'm sorry.
It was 98,952, and that's encompassing North Andover at 98K,
Yep.
Barnstable at 102,856, and Franklin at 96.
So if I could, Nate, I would
Yeah.
ask Rig, I'm not sure if those numbers reflect a 40-hour week or 35. 30, because right now the position is a 35-hour a week position.
I don't see on the
That
document.
information might not have been shared with us. And then my other question for that would be, it's kind of like when we compared school districts, you know, what is the size of those towns and what is the income level, medium income of the residents, you know, I mean, of the population? Because this money is coming from the taxpayers. I understand where you're coming from, Rig. It's just that, like you said, if the hours aren't equal and the salary or that supports the, you know, the revenue that those towns have, I'm not really sure. You know, it's just, that would be my concern.
And that's a fair point, Julie. Thank you so much for mentioning that as well.
You know, and I'll go back, I guess, to my original point is, I think for Ms. Hunt right now, this step increase is appropriate. And it does get her within the range. And she has what, one more year left too?
If she decides not to run again, yes.
I think she indicated to us she wasn't, but yeah. All right, and then like you said, we could, MJ and everybody else, we could be back here again a year from now, 2 years from now with this issue before us, but just with a new. Okay, any other
One last
questions?
thing, I'm sorry.
Yep, I'll go ahead.
One last
Steve.
thing from me.
Yeah.
As a business owner, when you have a good employee, you want to reward that employee, right? If Marilee was shown that she was appreciated with this current initiative that we have before us and made it appealing for her to want to stay on board, it probably starts right now with this decision.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm reviewing the last few years, 2%, 4% raise. That's not enough to retain quality help. But if we showed some sort of initiative now to Rig's point, it might be the time to keep a valued, qualified employee. And if not now, when?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why, you know, we can approve what's here in front of us and say, you know, and also look into the fact that maybe she's worth a little bit more, another step increase, right?
Agreed.
But I would say right now, you know, spend some time on this. I think it's time to at least approve this step right here for her.
Mhm.
And then, you know, I say to Mr. George, you know, when we talk to your fellow councilors, obviously a lot of the conversation here is leading to maybe she deserves a little bit more. Well, she does deserve more, but it seems to be what we're hearing, and maybe you can bring that up with your colleagues, especially on the budget.
It's already been discussed, so.
Okay.
And as I said, my mythology is she deserves a raise, step increase.
Yep.
But at the council level, it may go in a different direction, but
Yep.
that's the council decision.
All right, any other questions, comments, thoughts? Motion,
Motion to approve?
okay, thank you, MJ.
I would second that.
Thank you, Rig. If you could do a roll call for us, please, Josh.
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Oh,
Sorry, did you say no, Julie?
no,
Okay, thank you. The motion was
you're
approved.
welcome.
All right, thank you, everyone. I know that's a tough one. It is kind of really hard to get your hands around that subject, and I appreciate everybody's, you know, hard thinking questions. Okay, Mr. George, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I just want to say to everyone on the call, thank you very much for your time, not only on this, but I don't think it's said enough. A lot of people appreciate the time, effort, passion, expertise that you all bring. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. George.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yeah, and I would echo what Sean just said. You know, I hear it too around town. The people that know, you know, they know this can be a pretty thankless committee sometimes, but they're the ones that know, they know that important stuff gets done here. And that, you know, their interests are being looked out for. So I know it's a true statement. All right, so moving on to FY 23-054. So this is back to new business. The AFSCME contractual ratification, Mr. Dutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a ratification of essentially our skilled workforce collective bargaining agreement, and not a whole lot of changes of terrible substance, with the exception of classification pay rates. And I will go over those. So I think, as everybody knows, you know, with COVID and the recent past, you know, rates for a whole bunch of things have been all over the place. Specifically for us, trying to find water handlers, trying to find licensed water operators and wastewater operators, as well as highway laborers and heavy equipment operators, light equipment operators, right across the board. It's been very challenging for us. So we negotiated an agreement with AFSCME, which is a 3-year agreement. We're coming up on at the end of the first year, so we're this particular negotiation took a while for no particular reason other than it just took a while. But essentially, the first year there was no change in compensation. There was no change in the collective bargaining agreement compensation amounts for FY23, and then for FY24 and 25, we would give each member a 2-step increase, and a normal increase is a 1-step, very often coupled with a cost of living increase instead of a cost of living increase, which we're trying to shy away from. We granted 2-step increase to the members in each of those 2 years. So essentially, that's a 5% increase in FY24 and FY25. Then in addition, there were some slight increases in license compensations to essentially to incent those areas in which we're desperately in need of employees. So that is that's very basically the agreement, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. I think Nate's on mute if he doesn't know that.
I'm back. All right, thank you. I didn't know I was on mute, Michael, but I was pressing buttons trying to get back to the Zoom page. All right, any questions on this? I see this runs through 2025. It's actually been covering our past fiscal year. Is that correct?
Correct. So the last the fiscal year that ends in June is covered by this agreement, but there's no change in compensation for the first year. So there's no financial impact in the first year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Dutton? Comments? Okay, not hearing any, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Thank you, MJ. We have a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Rig. Josh, you do a roll call, please?
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you, everyone. All right, moving on to our next order, FY 23-010, establish a stabilization fund for the opioid legal settlements. Sounds like it might be something for our budget subcommittee. Well, anyways, if you can just give us a quick review, Michael. I have a feeling most of us know what this is. It's been in the news, but if you could just give us a quick rundown.
Okay, it has been in the news a little bit. Obviously, cities and towns joined a number of different class action lawsuits against manufacturers and marketers and sellers of various kinds of legal opioids, prescription opioids, and some of those class action lawsuits have been settled. Some have gone to at least begun to go to trial. So the recommendation from DOR was to set up a separate stabilization fund for any of the funds that the town might get in these settlements with the drug companies. And so we set up, and the reason for that is that invariably the settlements grant towns money, but we can't use those monies for general fund purposes. Those funds have to go in some cases into very specific for very specific uses. So we are proposing to set up a stabilization fund to hold only legal settlements that come out of the opioid litigation, and section 5B of chapter 40 is the provision of Mass General Law that allows us to set up a variety of different stabilization funds, but in particular, we are setting up an opioid stabilization fund. And the next piece of legislation actually dictates what we're going to fund it with, but this just sort of I equated to creating a bowl. We've just created a bowl to hold money that we get with this particular piece of legislation.
Okay, pretty straightforward. Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Dutton, comments? Do we have any idea how much we're talking about?
So yeah, we've collected about $25,000, and we know that we have additional settlements coming in, but I'm not sure what those will be. I'm not. It's certainly not going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but we might over. I think I can't remember how long the one settlement lasts, but it's a multi-year settlement. So we may see a couple of $100,000 accrue in this particular stabilization fund.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, MJ.
through you to Mr. Dutton. Michael, do we know exactly what we're going to use the funds for? Obviously, it's to have to do with the settlement itself. Do we have anything in particular that we could share with the public as an example of what tranche of money we can use it on right now feasibly?
We do have a program. It's interesting you ask, because we do have a program currently operated through the police department that brings essentially social workers and drug counselors on calls when they're going to a call that they know involves drug abuse. So that's designed essentially to be sort of a diversion program to keep folks out of prison and get them the assistance that they may need or want. So that's one area where that program so far has been grant funded. It's been quite successful. So that's an option that we may use this particular bunch of money for, but we're not under pressure, any time pressure to expend it yet. So we want to make sure that we know what all our options are before we propose a spending plan for that.
Thank you, Michael.
I do have a follow-up question to that. Has there been any discussion, Michael, with respect to maybe educating high school children about the challenges of drug use, opioids, etc., are really hitting them when they're young, with the hopes of preventing the possibility that they'll use when they get older? We haven't really had any conversation yet about the different options that might or will be available to us. So once we get a better idea of all of the different settlements and what the constraints are and the use of that money, absolutely we'll have those conversations. And I think your point is a good one, having those conversations with a district, if there's a way for us to contribute
money expertise in that regard, then I would be all for that. So, but we haven't had those conversations just yet.
Okay, thank you.
Very good point, Ray. A very important one. I agree with you 100%. All right, any questions, comments further? Like I said, at this point, we're just kind of creating the, like Michael said, the bowl to receive the monies to get filled up.
Motion to approve?
Thank you,
Second.
Rig. Thank you, MJ. Josh, roll call.
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. Quickly moving on, FY 23-011, Special Purpose Stabilization Fund, the opioid settlement. I see on here, Michael, that 100% of all the monies received will go into the fund.
So the chapter 40, section 5B essentially says you can create stabilization funds, and you have to decide how much of a particular revenue stream goes into that fund. And it can be as low as 25% according to that particular piece of the law. In this case, there makes no sense to do anything but 100% of the monies that we receive from the opioid settlements. And that's what this piece of legislation says.
Okay, thank you. Questions from anybody?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, MJ.
Second.
Thank you, Rig. Josh?
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on to our budget orders from our last meeting. I think everybody was at that meeting except for you, Julie. We did spend quite a bit of time. We did get a pretty detailed presentation from Mr. Dutton. I believe we spent an hour and a half on these orders. We did choose to continue them. A, just to see if there are any changes, because we wanted to give fellow committee members a chance to ask any questions that weren't able to attend that first meeting. So, Mr. Dutton, have there been any changes, big changes?
Well, to the budget, no, but I will just mention one thing. I think, as I explained last meeting, the sort of the elephant in the room, so to speak, was the debt exclusion and what this year would be about $308,000 of debt that we would owe to Bristol Plymouth, and that was not reflected in this operating budget. And had the vote been negative, we would have funded that through a capital appropriation probably next month or soon thereafter. Since the debt exclusion did pass, we will come back with an order to add that debt into our budget. But it won't require it. It's essentially because of the nature of the debt exclusion. It won't require, a revenue offset, so that it'll be fine. But we will add that later on. So that is not included in this operating budget. But as I say, you'll get a piece of legislation later on. Pretty much just a formality to add it into the budget. So that's really it. In terms of what's in front of you, there's been no change.
Okay, just for the record here, we are now discussing FY 24-001, the fiscal year 2024 annual town budget. Okay, like I said, we did go into this quite a bit at our last meeting, quite in depth. A lot of questions were asked. Do we have any follow-up questions? Julie, do you have?
So I do have a question for Mike. For the record, Mike, can you tell me how many voters or what percentage of the town voted on that question or in the election?
Oh, boy, Julie, how come you always ask the hard questions?
Because I know people can say I didn't know about it, or how come I didn't have a say when we all know they did. So I just wanted on the record how many voted.
I will pull up the results now, but I can tell you that it was very interesting to me because the vote back last March to actually go ahead and build the school was roughly a 2-to-1 margin. The debt exclusion, I was expecting a much closer vote, and it was actually about a 2-to-1 a
You
2-to-1.
anticipated my next question, so good job.
Well, only by accident. Let's
But
just
even though it
see.
was a 2-to-1 was, I mean, equally, like, did more people vote to make, build a new school than they voted to pay for it, I guess, is what, or the same, that's what I was trying to, that would.
Oh, that, yeah, no, that I don't know. I can pull that one up, but in terms of the vote, we had 650 yes votes, we had 308 no votes, and then a handful of blanks. So that's on the debt exclusion.
Yeah.
And you're right, that's in a town of however many 18,000 registered voters, that's pretty anemic turnout. And then let's just see.
Well, because we're going to struggle because Rainham's struggling, right? So I just want people to be aware that where it didn't, just reiterate that where it didn't pass in Rainham, it's going to affect our school, but the district budget is obviously, because it.
Probably, yeah, and it affected the district's budget this year, certainly.
Correct.
But
And Julie, you missed the last meeting. I thought when Mr. Dutton
Yeah,
said.
just for the record, I had a ticketed event and I could have made the other meeting. That was a
Yeah.
rescheduled meeting. It was not the original date.
The Lenny.
Otherwise,
the Lenny
I would
Clark.
have been there,
I know.
even though I'd rather meet in person.
I know.
Just
To the
saying.
best. But one thing, point that you did, that Mr. Dutton did make that I thought was kind of, I'm gonna say kind of cool, right? Is that we are contributing, right, Mr. Dutton, 3%? But
yeah, I'm sorry. Yes,
but
I
2%
believe.
is gonna be through a capital.
Right, so
Right.
we committed, I think as this committee knows pretty well, we committed a number of years ago to a revenue sharing program, so that any revenues that increases in revenues that the town received, we would give a proportional amount to the district, just as a matter of routine. That does a lot of things. It makes the district's budgeting a lot more predictable. And in, most years that really works quite well. This year was sort of the odd year out. We committed to a revenue share of, I think it was 3.14%. And the district, because it could not meet anything more than I think Rainham could only meet a 1% increase. They gave us, based their assessments on what Rainham could afford. And we in turn took the difference. I think our assessment ended up being 1.5, somewhere in that neighborhood, increase. And we took the delta, we took the differential, and we set that aside to make sure that we were dedicating that to school purposes, specifically in this case, it'll be capital for Bridgewater School, the Bridgewater schools. So it'll offset the capital somewhat, but we wanted to make sure that we were consistent with that revenue split in that, so that we, in years where we benefit, the school benefits, in years where, like Rainham this year, in years where we're lean, we can let the schools know right up front and pretty early in the process what we project our revenues to be for the following fiscal year. So that's been our program. We've stuck with it. We stuck with it in the good times for us. And we stick with it in the bad times for us. So I think regardless, it's a good process and a good routine for us. And I did want to get back. So back in last March, I think it was, we had even a lower turnout when the actual decision to build a school was on the ballot. That was 365 yeses and 160 noes. So there's that. So it was a greater
That vote
turnout
was a
for the
special election, not a regular town election.
right. Exactly. And it was that one question back in March.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yeah,
Could I ask a question, Michael? So
absolutely.
are we allowed as a town to to maybe put notification in, like, for example, the Brockton Enterprise, or send out whatever notification we might need to set, like mailing slips. And the reason that I'm asking the question is that, you know, the voter turnout who voted for this in comparison to the number of people that reside in this town, you know, it's like peanuts, right? The percentage just doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, everyone, if you're a taxpayer and you live in Bridgewater, you're responsible for this. So perhaps making everyone aware as best as possible that, you know, that we're going to be paying for this for the, you know, foreseeable future, and that not only are we going to be paying for it, but, you know, we're going to be carrying the town of Rainham. And of course, you guys will color it and make it seem appropriate. But could we do this? Is this something that the town is able to do?
That's a good question, Rig. You know, are we able to? We are. You know, we in this case, you know, in this past election, you know, we went out. We did, you know, pieces that aired on BTV, you know, aired on Facebook. You know, what we're trying to do is go to where voters are. And I can tell you, it's not just Bridgewater, it is absolutely universal across the country. People are really challenged trying to get, you know, voters engaged in what's going on in their towns. And there's some great ideas. Some we haven't tried yet. You know, we've tried, you know, bill stuffers. You know, here's your really exorbitant water bill, come vote on something, you know, and that still doesn't work. So it is a huge challenge for us. And I if there were, you know, sort of that, you know, that definite answer, I would, you know, do whatever I could to make it work. But yeah, I mean, we've had ads in the paper, you know, in years past, not so much now, because literally nobody reads the local paper. But we're, you know, I'm all ears if there's a way to sort of get people engaged and get them out to vote or get them discussing the issue. I'm all ears.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Go ahead, Ray.
So it's a question, also just a quasi recommendation. So the question part is, how much information are we allowed to share publicly? And then the quasi recommendation is, and I think about my church, right? And I realize it's a church, it's a way smaller organization in operation. But one of the things that we do as a church body is that, you know, we are transparent in terms of the budget, what comes in, what goes out, where it goes out to, and all the different things that my church is involved. So back to the question, if we are allowed as a town to be transparent in that sense, and yes, we you know, the information is available for anybody who wants to secure it, but could we perhaps, you know, have like a budget, you know, a broadcast budget, you know, something, right? And just broadcast it and kind of go through the line items. Here's where your monies are going, are you know, are going, and the different initiative that you're supporting. And then at least the folks, whether or not they voted, they'll get a sense of, oh wow, right? Maybe it might be a smack in the face, or maybe it might be enlightening. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah.
Nope.
And you gotta figure the town council discusses all this stuff, and the public can certainly be there, and that's televised, it's on BTV.
But I think
it can be a little frustrating, yeah.
I think, Nate, and Rick, one of the things we've looked at is a program, essentially a dashboard, so that when you go onto our website, you know, it comes right up and you see, you know, a pie graph, pie chart, you know, showing, you know, how much different funding each department gets, how, you know, if we're, you know, one quarter through the year, it shows, you know, spending tracks, you know, spending, you know, quarter over quarter, year over year. So that is something that we are very serious about, and we've been working to get our information, the type, all the information that we generate, get that in a format, in an order, in order to push it out there publicly. Because I think that's, obviously I could give you a spreadsheet, but 99.9% of the people aren't going to study a spreadsheet, but they will look at a pie graph, or a bar graph, how spending is increased year over year in certain departments, or decreased year over year in certain departments. So I think that's helpful. It's a visual that people need. And then so that we're working on, we're probably about a year out from being able to push that out there. But we also have, your point is a really good one about sort of hosting some sort of get together, whether it's in person or hybrid or virtual, and just walk line by line through the budget for those that have no idea, much like we do with a finance committee, but just do it on a public level. And I've talked about that. I used to do that years ago. And then it obviously, when we were all in person, and we didn't know how to do what we do today, but the interest in that waned pretty substantially about 4 years into it, and so I gave that up. But if now in a virtual world, if there are people that are interested in that's probably something we should revisit. So that's probably a good idea. I would
advocate once a quarter.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. And even the quarterly we see the financial reports every quarter too. That could be another thing for the dashboard. So good points there, Rig. Thank you, and thank you for your answers, Michael. Do we have any other questions on the budget order that's in front of us right now?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Rig. Thank you, MJ. Josh, if you could do a roll call, please.
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We will move on to FY 24-022, the fiscal year 2024 Water Enterprise Fund budget. We did go through this at our last meeting. Do we have any additional questions for Michael on this one? Comments? Additional information for us, Michael?
Nothing additional. Nope. Same.
Motion to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Rig. Josh?
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. FY 24-003, fiscal year 24 Sewer Enterprise Fund budget. Again, same comments from last time. Anything, Michael?
Nothing new.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MJ.
Second.
Thank you, Rig. Josh?
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you, everyone. And just for some of our newer members, just so you know, the chair can't make motions. That's why I'm always silent on the issue. FY 24-005, authorization of revolving funds. Again, we discussed at the last meeting. Anything changed?
Mr. Chairman, did we skip
Sure.
over FY 24-04?
Oh, did I? I did. I'm sorry. I put a check mark next to it too early. FY 24-004, FY 24 Transfer Station Enterprise Fund budget.
No changes.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, MJ.
Second.
That was Steve, right?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Josh, roll call.
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you. Final order for the evening, FY 24-005, authorization of revolving funds. Nothing new?
Nothing new.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, thank you, MJ. Thank you, Rig. Josh?
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Real quick, we had a long meeting last time. I don't want to drag this one out any longer. Just, I did hear that the subcommittee is meeting next week.
Yes.
Is that correct?
We'll be meeting next Tuesday at 6 PM.
Do we want to do that in person or Zoom? How do you guys feel
I
about
would
it?
say do it via Zoom.
Okay.
Okay, that's great. So next discussion real quick would be our next meeting, which would be May, what, Josh?
That would be May 8th.
May 8th. Okay. All right. So we will set our next meeting for May 8th, 7:30 PM. Okay, anything else? If not, we can do that favorite motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Hi. Whatever you want to put down, Josh.
I'll keep it a
Nickname.
surprise. You guys have to tune in for the minutes.
Yeah. All right, if you could do a roll call, please, Josh.
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a
Okay,
good
thank
one.
you,
everybody.
Night all.
everybody.
See
All
you
right,
all
good
on
night.
Tuesday.
Yep,
Okay,
bye.
thank you.